morning, sir.
Morning, Aditya.
Today we're trying to understand with Dr. JP the whole scenario and the fiasco, as one would say, about the whole US student visa thing and what role does India play in it and what impact does it have on India. Sir, just before we begin, just a few stats. According to a Savis by the Numbers report from the Department of Homeland Security, that's US itself, a record 420,000 Indian students were actively enrolled in US higher education. That is an 11.8% increase over 2023, bringing India's share to 27% of all international students. That makes India the top source country. India has surpassed China. Now, with this stat in mind, and the whole controversy around student visa and stricter screenings and all of that, so my first question to Dr. GP would be: these numbers state that India is relying heavily on US for higher education, sir. What are the potential risks and benefits of this reliance on America?
First, Aditya, let's put things in perspective. We have 40 million, I think 42 million kids enrolled in higher education in India. Now, 420,000 or thereabout you're talking about, it accounts for 1% of that number. So, first of all, it's not that in terms of numbers, India is overly reliant on any country in higher education, in respect of higher education. While we may be the biggest contributor to United States overseas student population, and we may be exceeding China now. Earlier, China used to be number one, India used to be number two. If you take the totality, United States accounts for only 1% of the total enrollment of Indian kids in higher education. So let's have that understanding first. The second, you are right. While it is only 1%, they probably constitute a significant proportion of the more serious students with some foundations who want to pursue higher education with the serious intent to acquire skills and knowledge. Because most higher education in India has become a bit of a disaster. I know it's a very harsh word, but it's more like accumulating a degree without any purpose. It's for no fault of the kids or their parents, but somehow the system is totally distorted. So, among the more serious uh, students pursuing skills and knowledge in higher education, or capable of pursuing skills and knowledge in higher education, a significant proportion are obviously going to the United States or maybe to other English speaking countries, some even to non English speaking countries. To that extent, you can see a significant brain drain because those who go to United States, for instance, very often tend to stay there if opportunities are available there. To that extent, it's contributing to brain drain. It's also contributing to drain of the exchequer, not government exchequer, but drain on the national exchequer. We probably are spending, according to some estimates, 15 to 25 billion US dollars per year only in the United States. And it stands to reason if there are 420,000 or so students from India in the US enrolled, if you take the lodge and board and the tuition fee typically for foreign students is much higher than for domestic students. Because after all, demand is there. They're not taxpayers in America, and therefore they will charge them a higher fee. So if you take the tuition fee, lodge and board, it's reasonable to assume that per child or per student, the annual expenditure is probably the order of about $50,000 or thereabout. So 400,000, 50,000 per head is coming to $20 billion. A significant amount of foreign exchange is also leaving the country. What it shows is the desperation of the parents and the better class of students who might not be able to get very highly respected uh, institutions with brand image like the IITs and the IIMs, etc. Only very few institutions have acquired a reputation in India. Whether or not they're performing to global standards, they at least have reputation and brand image. And obviously, in a country with tens of millions competing for these slots, there are only a limited number available in these prestigious institutions. If you take engineering, probably India's total admission And the country is of the order of maybe right now about 2 million. I don't know the current number. It used to be 1.5 million per year at one stage. I would not be surprised if it's now exceeded 2 million because our higher education institutions are proliferating in numbers. A lot of people entering into higher education. It's almost become a real estate business. It's almost become like any other business without any understanding or ability to improve the quality of education or impart good education. It became more like a business enterprise with a lot of political connections, real estate, bribery, and so on and so forth. So, out of the 2 million or so who get admission into the STEM courses every year, I think India has almost 10 million out of the 42 million in STEM courses alone, maybe 12 or 13 million actually, if you take including undergraduate courses other than engineering, etc. Out of them, only about 10% or so in India, 10 to 15% maximum, are providing passable quality of higher education. And therefore, those who cannot get admission in these 10% slots, or those who have ambition and who want to go to the most prestigious American institutions or British institutions, and who can afford that, they tend to migrate. Now, I don't think that going out of the country to pursue knowledge is a bad idea. I don't think even people leaving the country and establishing businesses or doing jobs abroad is a bad idea. Brain drain, I don't believe is a really serious problem, ordinarily speaking. As I keep saying, brain drain is better than brain in the drain. Now, if the kids cannot get opportunities in India, denying them opportunity elsewhere is a very foolish idea. The real problem is that out of the large pool of potential human resource available, only potential resource available, not real human resource, only a small number are fulfilling their potential. And a significant proportion of that small number are now migrating to the rest of the world. And very many of them are lost to the country forever. And therefore, unless we address this challenge in terms of enlarging our resource pool, not merely potential but real resource pool, by improving the quality of higher education, we will have this crisis becoming more and more deep. India has the deepest crisis in education, school education as well as higher education, one linked to the other. Because bad school education, very poor school educational outcomes, and there's demonstrable evidence, compelling and conclusive evidence to show that school education outcomes are appallingly bad in India. Once the foundations are weak, once they enter higher education, obviously they will not do very well either for themselves and for the society. And higher education, independent of the foundational weakness, is extremely perfunctory, very weak, and we need to address that. But I believe it's a low hanging fruit because the society wants education and rewards education. The parents sacrifice a great deal. The fact that we are sending our kids, one of the poorest countries, sending our kids to the United States, one of the richest countries, and spending astronomical sums in pursuit of education shows the amount of sacrifice that the parents in India are willing to make, the middle class parents, mostly middle class, they're not very rich or anything, sometimes even poor parents. And the kids are working very hard. And they're willing to really make good the opportunities available. So we have all factors in favor. If only we set our house in order, alter the incentives in higher education, we can qualitatively improve the higher education quite significantly in a very short period of time. I think that's the lesson we should take.
Thank you, sir. So we will get back to what India should do. We'll talk about it in slightly more detail. But I wanted to ask you about the US as of now, right? We've had these tariff policies, right? They kind of speaking, they kind of talk about how the free flow of goods will get affected, right? You've had migration, immigration policies. They talk about free flow of labor getting affected, right? And now you have these stricter visa policies, more or less free, at least affecting the free flow of intellect. So do you think that right now US is going anti-global, or this is a trend of inward-looking United States of America? Is that something that you see?
I think there are two broad ways of looking at it. In a broader sense, yes, America has become more isolationist. There is very little doubt about that. Whether it will be a long term trend or a short term trend, we have to wait and see. Eventually, I think it will be corrected, because there's going to be a labor shortage. America is not a country with unemployment. America has full employment, near full employment. America is not a country without economic growth or with stagnation. America has robust economic growth by developed country standards. America is not a country with demographic crisis. It's not a country with excessively aged population with very few working age population. America has significant working age population, and without immigration, they probably will not have that advantage. For all these three reasons, the economic forces eventually uh, will counter the political trends which are transient, in my view. That apart, if you take higher education per se, even among the isolationists of the Trump brand, a significant section actually want talent to migrate to United States. Even Donald Trump himself, as candidate, on more than one occasion publicly stated that anybody who comes from another country in pursuit of higher education in one of the better institutions in America should be encouraged to stay and live in the United States, because we should not lose the talent. Obviously, there seems to be a clash between the two elements. One is the hardcore MAGA group who are somewhat xenophobic, and the soft MAGA group who simply believe that excessive immigration, particularly illegal immigration, is causing immense problem to the country, and therefore they must curb it, but they must allow legal immigration and the migration of the talented people. And I think eventually that will be sorted out, and the business class and the entrepreneurial class and the big companies in the United States, which are in search of talent all the time, they'll probably prevail. So what it means is, in short, yes, there'll be pinpricks in the short term, probably even medium term. But eventually, America needs talent, particularly from countries like India, which are not seen as strategic threat. American higher education institutions require income from the high fee paying students. They cannot afford to lose them. And the American businesses require bright workers and entrepreneurs who will make a difference to the economy in the future. For all these reasons, while there will be pinpricks, I don't think there's going to be any serious danger to Indian students who are pursuing higher education sensibly. But that means Indians also must be discriminating. They can't go to worthless universities. Unfortunately, even in these countries, they're taking advantage of the helplessness of Indian students and the desperation to get admission in these countries. And some fake universities and all kinds of ramshackle institutions are coming up and cheating the parents. And that, therefore, I think we must also establish mechanisms by which the parents and the students are guided well and they don't get cheated. But yes, they're going to be pinpricks.
Thank you for that answer, sir. So now we'll come back to India. While we do come back to India, I want to poke you on China as well. I want to make this a comparative question, right? We have seen China has been doing exceedingly well, especially in STEM research nowadays, right? Even some say better than US as well. In US has widely been regarded as the leader, global leader in education in all those fields, right? So it's a two-parter question. A, of course, what can India do? Uh, and while you do sort of dwell on that, do let us know what has China done right, sir, and what we can learn from China as well. While we do need to sort of make sure that our institutions are nice and brilliant, what do we need to learn from China?
Aditya, it's a great question. 20 years ago, sometime around 2005, along with four other very distinguished Indians, I happened to visit China as a part of a delegation. Everywhere I went, I dealt with Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, CAS, and other academics and other intellectuals in China. Everywhere I went, they expressed admiration for Indian higher education. Now, by that time, many of us were familiar with the collapse of higher education in India. But obviously, when you go to a foreign country, particularly a country like China, you would maintain discreet silence when they talk about your higher education, because they were influenced by the Indian brands, the IITs and the IIMs, which certainly have a global brand. and they were lamenting their lack of depth in higher education. But 20 years later now, China is a serious challenge to the United States. Take, for instance, the current American imbroglio. Chinese government is not panicking at all. They're actually saying, here is an opportunity. You don't have to worry about the United States. Come here. We are some of the best universities in the world with tremendous opportunities, R&D, equipment. You can do anything that you want. They're also saying to other countries, you can send your kids to our country, to our higher education institutions. You can learn here. See the degree of optimism, confidence, backed by real accomplishment. Whereas Indian kids are panicking. Where do we go? Because we cannot honestly claim that, look, there are opportunities here. You come to our universities and learn the same, learn as well as in the United States or elsewhere. That shows the qualitative difference between the two. Numbers wise, India is way above China, 42 million in higher education, as opposed to China's only about 11 million. About China has only one-fourth of the numbers. In STEM education, 9.8, almost 1 crore million in STEM education in India. China has only about 3.9, 40%. Despite that, China is doing much better. In terms of public expenditure, people think that India is not spending much. It's complete misreading of the problem. While our GDP is lower, the actual expenditure as share of GDP is higher in India. 1.7% of GDP is spent by the government in India on higher education, as opposed to China, which is only about 0.8 to 0.9%, only about half of it. Now, despite that, China's record is impressive. 13 of their universities are in the top 100 in the world, in the global rankings. There's none from India. None from India. China now leads the world in R&D and patenting. Earlier, America was an undisputed leader, but China is now a match for America, perhaps even exceeding in terms of the expenditure on R&D, the quality of R&D, patents, citations, papers published, and so on and so forth. And China accomplished all that in about 20 years' time. Now, what are the differences? What can make things happen on this scale? I think there are 5 significant differentiators. One is, don't forget the quality of school education. Without high quality school education, you cannot dramatically improve higher education overnight. I must be very candid. Our school education is appallingly poor. Umpteen number of times we ourselves from FDR publicly have stated there's nothing new about it. Many organizations have come out. Pratham's Assess Survey, the global survey of PISA, for instance, national achievement survey of the governments themselves in the country. Time and again they show the appalling quality of poor, school education in India. So China did not have that problem. Even 20 years ago, China was somewhere at the top in terms of school education outcomes. And once you have that foundational strength, higher education can be improved very quickly. The second is outcome focus rather than universities becoming a degree awarding factories. It's like, a degree is a piece of paper. Serious educational outcomes, the content or curriculum or the rigor in academic pursuit, you can see that. And therefore, a graduate actually means something. Just like a school graduate in China means something as opposed to a school graduate in India, in most cases, knows very little. The third is the link with industry and society. Therefore, actually handling the problems, present or future, in society as part of the curriculum, particularly in STEM technologies or even social sciences. It's not merely theoretical or definitional education based on rote learning, with actual application of knowledge to solve real life problems in science and technology, industry, manufacturing, and in society. And the fourth is the research and development focus, investment, equipment, and genuine focus on research and development, and respect for patents or papers and the quality of research. And finally, willingness to attract the finest talent from the world, wherever they are, whether they're of Chinese origin or non Chinese origin. They simply opened up the sector and said, please come. work here. You get the same compensation as elsewhere in the world, higher quality of life in terms of the purchasing power and all that, and tremendous academic freedom. We just want to improve the quality of our education. Five things. All five are critical. Now, let me quickly elaborate on one or two in Indian context. Our school education is appallingly poor. We can quickly improve that in the next few years, and we have to really focus on that because we are spending a lot of money. The kids are working hard, the parents are sacrificing a great deal, but we're getting appallingly poor outcomes. Take hiring the best talent from the rest of the world. When people of Indian origin working abroad wanted to come back to India after retirement age and want to give back something to their mother country, even if they're not citizens of India today, some of them are not, uh, our universities were very reluctant to embrace that. We cited archaic and utterly insane rules and procedures of UGC and this and that, and we did not take advantage. So we require flexibility. We require relentless focus on goals and outcomes, not silly processes which become rigid obstacles to progress. We require to leverage our strengths, and we can do that. It will not happen instantly because in India, one of the problems is we want to achieve spectacular results in the next 1 year. Absurd. Education is a long term process. It takes about 20 years. If we start the process now from school education to focusing on outcomes to linking with society and its real problems and science and technology as well as the general societal problems, education making it relevant to the needs of society, to R&D focus, and to hiring the best talent. If we do all these things, it will take time for it to seep in. But because there's an enormous talent pool, a lot of demand, we can quickly set things right. In about 20 years' time, I guarantee you, if we do the right things today, we will not be in this sorry situation. We will be doing pretty well. But do we have that vision, or do we want results in 1 year, pretend that we have achieved results without actual tangible outcomes? Or you want to do the right things, put the foundations in place, and let the system deliver for the country? That's the challenge for us.
Thank you for that answer, sir. So, this will probably be my last question, and I want to end it on a slightly philosophical note. You mentioned about attracting best talent across the world, right? And that's what America also has been doing, right? They attract talent from the best of the world, and they produce knowledge, produce theories, and all of those things. So, knowledge creation in itself is a collaborative process, right? Do you think a country that has built institutions on such a collaborative process, global collaborative process, can one day say, hey, look, I have this bunch of knowledge, this bank of knowledge that I'm not willing to share? This is a philosophical question, sir. You can choose to answer however you would like to answer this, but just your take on that, sir.
You're absolutely right. In today's world, the barriers have collapsed. First of all, even if a government is determined not to share knowledge, the government no longer has the capacity. They may make it more difficult, they may create hurdles, but the barriers are broken. And I think it cannot be altered, even if you wish it. In this era of instant communication, 24-hour social media, satellite television, of course, internet and other things, the genie is out of the bottle. But you can create obstacles. You can create needless difficulties. Second, as you said rightly, the last 500 years of enlightenment, the scientific temper, and are about collaboration, are about building on some other people's knowledge. Now, it may be Berzelius who came up with a hypothesis about the number of atoms or molecules in a gram atom, whereas, or Avogadro who has perfected that into a theory. But irrespective of the origin, national origin, it is the knowledge that is created already that's used as a foundation and the stepping stone for the next level. And ultimately, it becomes integrated, one integrated whole, and the legacy of all of humanity. To believe that somehow knowledge can be segmented, particularly in the fields of science and technology, is an absurd notion. Knowledge is indivisible, it cannot be segmented. It may be compartmentalized for reasons of convenience, even in terms of botany, zoology, physics, chemistry. But after a point, it's irrelevant. We are in the age of fusion of knowledge. The barriers between Even the large boundaries, the physical, the digital, and the uh, biological, is now completely fusing. You cannot any longer say biology is different from physics and chemistry. We are entering that era. And therefore, to think that national boundaries will somehow stop diffusion of knowledge is silly. But the countries that deliberately make an effort to prevent diffusion of knowledge will actually pay the price, and mankind also will pay a price for some time at least. So it's not a particularly wise course. I think these are transient political difficulties. In a democracy, when people's aspirations and expectations conflict with the reality on account of emerging technologies and the global processes, the electoral outcomes versus economic needs or societal needs, they're going to be a clash. I think that's a clash we're witnessing in parts of Europe and the United States for the time being. This is the pain that democracies have to go through. In a country like China, because there is no need to depend on universal franchise, you can overcome these by bulldozing the public opinion. But that only works up to a point. Only when there's a broad consensus and belief that the elites in the country in positions of leadership are working for the long-term good of the nation, and and the deal is that while you have your way as leadership, our prosperity is increasing, our lives, our quality of life is getting better. And I think in China that's being delivered reasonably well. And therefore, apart from authoritarianism, it is this broad consensus that keeps them going for quite some time. They don't have to worry about political vicissitudes on a short term basis. Russia is not able to accomplish that, therefore, they have to find an external enemy and make believe issues at the cost of the country. So I think these are challenges we have to go through inevitably. And that's why, at a fundamental level, now China is posing a challenge to the United States and the Western model. If you notice, the Soviet Union versus United States and Europe, the whole Cold War business, was not about goals, it's about the means. Both the systems propose the same goals, materialistic goals of prosperity and better lives and lifestyles for their people and their children. Eventually, America won. Eventually, the West won. West won by embracing the best of their own philosophy of market economy and the communist philosophy of uh, welfare, education, opportunity, and dignity. Now, China is posing an even more formidable challenge because they have embraced the Western economic model and innovation and education and enterprise with the Chinese model of political management. And they are saying, look, you guys are going through all kinds of vicissitudes and distortions, see what's happening in your respective countries. Whereas we gave a stable political order and growing economy and technology and innovation. Ours is a better model. It's a more credible challenge, actually. And I think the world has to come up with an answer. And India has an important role to play, being a poor country, struggling now to rise again to fulfill her potential. In many ways, embrace the Chinese model of economic growth, rapid economic growth, etc. India has to prove that through democratic process we can actually accomplish what China has accomplished. Rapid economic growth on a sustained basis is possible through democracy. If India fails, we'll have given a lot more strength to the Chinese argument that democracy and development and keeping the people happy, these three cannot be sustained. So I think there's a fundamental challenge now in the world. China is actually throwing the gauntlet, and India has to pick it up and shape our own institutions to prove that we can combine, we can marry democracy and liberty on the one hand with economic growth and prosperity and political stability. I believe it's possible. Whether we'll be able to do it or not depends on the kind of wisdom that our leadership and the elites, not necessarily only political leaders, but the bureaucratic, the business, the middle class, and the media elites, if we understand and embrace, then I think we can do the right things. But if we want to hold on to our own individual privileges as a class or as individuals, and yet want to achieve some spectacular outcomes for the country, there's going to be a clash between our personal greed, uh, protecting our turfs, our privileges as individuals and small groups at the cost of the rest of the society without being egalitarian in our approach. For instance, caste system, for instance, unequal access to education and healthcare. This cannot continue to coexist with rapid economic growth and prosperity for the whole country. There's going to be a clash. So we have to wake up. And our national leadership in every branch of society, not only in politics, we have to really wake up and understand the real opportunity and the real challenge to our future.
Thank you so much, sir. So that was Dr. JP. We're trying to unpack the whole student visa fiasco in US and then what India needs to do to improve its higher education. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya.